Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at, well, a Battlecruiser. Yes, and it's British. Why am I doing this? Well, this one is interesting. This is the Collingwood, a sort of Nelson design, which obviously never existed, and not honestly even in the plans. So if we're looking at the description, it says that it is similar to the Nelson class, and there were a fair amount of cruiser designs around the G3s and the H3s and all these preliminary designs that came up before the Naval Treaty put a very quick end to it in the 1920s. And the British had to settle to build something that was fitting within the treaty limits, and that's how Nelson, with some inspiration from the previous designs, was born, with lots of compromises, especially also around the guns. Now, this ship is a bit different. This is more like potentially like a what-if Nelson of some sorts. So let's have a quick look at what's going on here. The first obvious comparison that we'll have to draw between the Collingwood is, well, Collingwood and the Nelson. And the first thing we notice is that the Collingwood has a decent amount of ship skills. She gets a rapid reload, and not just any old rapid reload, that's a rapid reload 3. She gets sonar, because reasons, and she actually gets the new emergency repair thing, which gives you 15% extra HP recovery. That said, the Collingwood also has actually less hit points than the Nelson, and more importantly has lower armor than the Nelson. Now, given that we are going to be seeing a British Battlecruiser line coming into the game, this does not bode well for these things. Because that is really not an awful lot of armor. She is also less maneuverable than the Nelson. One of the really nice things about the Nelson, obviously, is the fact that she is, well, got all her guns forward pointing, even though you can't get all of them firing at the same time if you're bow in, because, well, the sea turret is behind the barbette. That is somewhat compensated for by the fact that the Nelson is really, really maneuverable and can actually compensate a lot for the lack of armor with dodging. A little bit more difficult in this ship. She is, however, slightly better on the engines. And she doesn't really have the same problem that the Nelson has. Well, she does, but she has 3 twin turrets. So this is a 6-gun ship versus the Nelson's 9 guns. So you'd say, okay, we've seen those before. I think, what's it called, the Borodino? The Soviet ship that worked out really, really well. So how does it look here? These are actually 419mm guns. These are similar to the Lion's guns, actually, but we are at tier 7. So for tier 7, this is a seriously big caliber of guns. They do the same amount of HE damage, have very slightly better range, a little bit faster reload, and have a little bit more armor-piercing damage than Nelson's. But the turrets are very, very sluggish, obviously a World War I or post-World War I sort of design. And 6 of them only, instead of the 9, which means obviously the rapid reload is the thing that you're going to go with here. The rest of the ship is very, very similar to the Nelson. The AA is even worse, and the concealment is slightly better. Still 10 kilometers though. So let's have a quick look and see how these match up against the Lion's guns at tier 9, because, well, I wasn't super impressed with the Lion's guns. And yes, obviously on paper these are Mark II turrets, and the guns do more damage, have a better fire chance, and a significantly better range. But this is tier 7. And while the guns in tier 9 were not particularly impressive, the armor piercing especially, this is the premium line. And in the premium line, sometimes the AP isn't actually that bad. And in fact, this is one of those ships. So as you can see, the turret layout is completely the same as on the Nelson, which means if you are completely bow in, you only get 4 guns on target. Now, she does not have the world's greatest dispersion. She has, however, a little, I would say it's almost a little trollish in that sometimes it goes everywhere, but sometimes it can be extremely tight as well, and I'll feel like almost Russian in comparison. So I suspect that at the lower end, or the minimal dispersion, is actually quite good. So yeah, if we compare her to the Nelson, she's extremely bright. I don't know why that is, but looks suspiciously similar. Which brings us to what can we put in here? You can use there's really only one elite bonus that you want to use, and that's the improved gun, because it gives you reload, which is great, and it gives you battery traverse speed, which is sorely needed. You can fit the historical camo on, and the ship's still quite bright in that, and that's your standard historical camo. There is an alternate camo, which is called the industrial camo, which I think the only difference between that is that it improves the traverse speed, which is great. So this is stats-wise definitely the better camo, but it's not an awful lot. It's 4% max traverse, and we'll be using the historical for now. However, this ship is actually in the Blitz pass, so I think it was somewhere around level. Yeah, there we go. Level 40. You get the Collingwood, and if you were going to purchase it, the Blitz pass premium bundle, if you want to pay extra, nets you the industrial camo. So if you don't mind, it's not a terrible one. It's got this kind of like, I don't know what is this, like a mining light or something up in the front. But other than that, it's not a terrible looking camo as camos go, and that is the slightly better one compared to the historical. It also gives you not Admiral Collingwood as an epic commander, and I have no idea why that is, because that would have made sense, whereas this does not quite make sense. So this epic commander has only 2 skills because he's an epic. He's only epic, he's not legendary, so he's less legendary than the legendary commanders, but more epic than the common peasant commanders that we all have to deal with. He gets the damage control cooldown time, which is okay, and although I probably would be using artillery maintenance more, so I'm not sure. And he would get the Adrenaline Rush Plus, which is also not terrible, but again, this is one of those instances where I would probably be using Extinguisher instead. So doable, but not the commander you really want for this. There is, however, an actual Admiral Collingwood as an epic commander, and that one makes a heck of a lot more sense in my opinion, because that one gives us repair kit cooldown time, which together with the emergency repair is actually a good thing, and he also gives us the improved master reloader, which, given that this is a rapid reload ship, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I have no idea why we're not getting that one. We should have, and that's just something to keep in mind if you want to get the premium version of it, because that saves you obviously the money to purchase the historical camo, but at the same time gives you an epic commander that is not actually fitting for this ship very well, in my opinion. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's look at the equipment first. 2 good choices here really. You could use the main battery mod 1 for turret traverse, or you can use the main battery mod 2 for better reload. The turrets are very sturdy. I haven't really have mine shot off yet, so you can totally use the reload module here. And also, obviously, this works the same way as the Nelson in that I'll try to zoom in a little bit. You can sort of see it here in that the C turret actually fits under the B turret. So it doesn't have to go the long way around in any way. It can swing from one side to the other. So if you're looking like that, then the turret gets on target, and if you're looking like that, then the turret can just swing underneath the one in front of it and gets on target relatively quickly. So it's not a huge problem unless you are in a highly maneuverable engagement and you're trying to swing your guns like the long way around to point towards the rear because you're running away from something or similar. But both would be valid choices, I feel, in this one. Propulsion mod in slot 2 is without much of a question. Now you could argue that this ship could benefit from concealment, given that the armor is positively dreadful. And yes, that is also a valid choice. Personally, I did feel like I need to compensate a little bit for the maneuverability in terms of the bow-in gameplay, and use the steering here. So that in all nets us a 12-second turn time, which is okay. And we've got an 18.4-second base reload on the guns, and obviously with the consumables plus the rapid reload, you're getting a decent amount of shells on target. And these armor-piercing shells, so this is one of those British battleships that you should mostly be playing on the AP. You can use the HE against things like destroyers if you want to. She's not quite as good as Nelson because she only has 6 guns, and if you don't have the rapid reload ready, you're not doing enough, and the dispersion is trollish enough even at close ranges that sometimes you can mostly miss a destroyer that's rushing you. So against destroyers, she's nowhere near as dangerous as Nelson is, because Nelson can almost one-shot destroyers if they get in the way. But it's still capable. But the armor piercing is really where it's at. And here, yeah, you have the turret traverse time with just under 5 degrees per second, which is not great. So, which means also when you're doing the commander setup, you definitely want to have the fire supremacy for an additional rapid reload. You want to have the master reloader, and you want to have the armor piercing cap shell. I am going to play 2 games. One game with the standard setup, so with a level 7 commander, not epic commander, but it's the same setup, and the other one with a 12-point captain with APCS and the epic skills here from Collingwood himself, because that makes sense, and obviously then with the premium consumables. So this is, well, it could be the first inkling of what's to come with the Battlecruisers, because most likely they're going to be based around the G3 designs and the H3 designs and similars. So most likely what we're going to be seeing is 2 turrets forward and then 1 turret somewhere behind the forward superstructure. And probably the same questionable amount of armor that we have in others. So I think we've covered pretty much most of it. Let's see it in action, and let's see how a 6-gun battle cruiser with terrible armor and only okayish maneuverability holds up. Because the Nelson is an okay ship. It's not like the world's greatest ship, but it's also not really bad. It's an okay ship. It can be fun to play, and I've had good games in the Nelson. And this thing, we'll see how she holds up. And the first battle is one that we play with the standard setup. We are bottom tier against Tirpitz. I think another Tirpitz. Was that a Tirpitz or an Odin? I can't always remember. One of those things. Vladi, Miyoko, Fiji, and 2 destroyers. Domination on fault line. Now, the Collingwood comes out with the armor-piercing preloaded. And that is a good choice. Just like in a ship like the Hood, the AP is really quite powerful here. So we are spawning near Sea Cup, and I've got a Shiratsuyu with me. So let's see where he's going, but we can give some fire support around C and check what's going on there. I probably don't want to rush the Cup too much, because if I get in the way of some of the larger guns, then things go badly very, very quickly. The fact that you have 6 guns only, and at long range they are, like I said, not necessarily the most precise, can make her feel a little inferior at the beginning. But in fact, it's actually quite good. She's not as precise as the Soviets, obviously. She doesn't also get the precise aim. But it's really more a factor of getting these shots on target and getting lots of them on target using the rapid reloads. So we'll be positioning, and there's obviously a destroyer inside C, so we'll be positioning here. There is the Vladivostok. He can't see me, I think, because of the island. So let's get some shots out. And you see that was a really, really good grouping. We'll see if we can get him on target, because I wasn't quite aiming, because he's gone undetected as well, so it was only 1 hit. Oh, there he is again. But yeah, you obviously want to be completely bow in. And I am using manual aim quite a bit with this ship, and I'm already in reverse here, seeing the incoming fire from the Vladivostok. I'm using manual aim quite a bit here with this ship, because the guns can be pretty precise, which means that the auto aim is probably pulling it down more towards the center of the ship. Vladivostok has dodged the torpedoes, and there's an Akatsuki as well as the Cross of Dorn over there. And as you can see, this is without the armor-piercing cap shell, but with manual aim. But with these guns, you can put a lot of pain onto that ship. Now the Akatsuki is coming after me, so I'm sending one more salvo towards the Vladivostok and then switching to the high explosive. And now I obviously need to back up a little bit and disengage from here somewhat and deal with that Akatsuki, because we now also have the Cross of Dorn and the Miyoko coming. And the Akatsuki is going to come around the corner here, obviously, so we need to avoid incoming battleship fire, while at the same time deal with being destroyer rushed. Now in a Nelson, I would have looked forward to this. Now I don't have the rapid reload ready, so I'm getting one salvo. No, he's not actually coming out yet. And yes, I need to... he might have got torpedo. No, I don't think I would have seen him if he had torpedoes away. Anyway, I'm going to switch on the sonar just for now. And see if, yep, there he comes. And see if he gets these torpedoes away. But he is turning in for, oh, okay. So this is one thing that I'm seeing, and I'm not going to accuse anybody, but I'm seeing this a lot these days. That people suddenly seem to be dropping off their connections when being shot at. Now, this might have literally just been a bad connection. I'm, again, not accusing anyone, but there comes the Akatsuki and is obviously having a stuttering issue, which makes it really hard, which makes it extra hard to hit that thing. So I'm going to keep reversing and just wait for him to turn around. Now I'm not going to have, I don't have the Nelson's guns. I've got the same armor piercing, I've got the same high explosive firepower, but he's obviously rushing, so I'm going to start using the rapid reload. And then just keep the nose towards the enemy, and I'm just going to try and dodge as much as I can from these torpedoes, which means I only take 2, because he sort of fluffed that. I think I took a phantom torpedo there as well for the flood, but he manages to get out of that and without too much problems. But now he's obviously running into a Geyser now and a North Carolina, so that's a very, very dead Akatsuki, which means after the next salvo, trying to get this thing sorted, I can actually switch back to the armor piercing, because I now also have the Cross of Dorn coming at me. And fortunately, that's only his auto secondaries, because he's got other things to shoot at, which is good, because I don't have any armor, and this is not a situation I want to be in. So I am going to just, again, manual aim, deck armor, there you go, boink. These 419mm guns in a tier 7 game can do some serious, can cause some serious pain. And again, this is with a standard captain. Yeah, he gets his torpedoes away, but he is very dead. So if anyone's no one's finishing him off. Okay, now he was shooting at me, I think, but he's now dead. And that means we're down to just 2 enemy ships. So against destroyers, definitely not as dangerous as a Nelson. If you're in a Nelson, or if you're in a destroyer and you're rushing a Nelson and you're showing your broadside at some point, then Nelson can end you. Yeah, that Vladivostok still right back there in the capture circle and probably wondering where all his friends went. So Nelson can very much sort of almost one-shot you blapping out of the water. This thing not so much, just due to the fact that she only gets the 6 guns. If you have the rapid reload up, you can do a little bit more, but it's still not necessarily guaranteed that you can defend yourself against destroyers that well. On the Nelson, you'd be basically 2-shot. If it's a damaged destroyer, you'd 1-shot it. If it isn't, then you basically 2-shot it. And oftentimes, just the sheer amount of damage you do with a single salvo against the destroyer is enough to deter them and scare them into running away. Whereas here you don't quite have that. And you have even worse armor than the Nelson, which means you need to put yourself into positions where you can either evade, because you don't also have an awful lot of hit points, where you can either evade or where you can, have them shoot at someone else, basically. So if you catch somebody who's shooting at your teammates and not at you, then that's a good thing. Whereas if you need to go defensive in the ship, be aware that she's losing health extremely quickly. So while we're chasing this other destroyer down, this is basically I'm just using my secondaries here to get myself spotted. I do that from time to time, so I just wanted to call it out. If you're chasing a destroyer and you're in a battleship and you don't know exactly where he is, you can just fire one of your secondary guns, which gets your concealment to bloom. And then so if you're unspotted, it gets your concealment to bloom. And if you then become spotted, you know that the destroyer is somewhere between your unspotted and spotted concealment. So if you look at the dotted line on the minimap, the destroyer is somewhere between these two lines. And if you have an angle, as in you have a pretty decent idea where they are, like from a capture circle or similar, you can sort of triangulate pretty well where the destroyer is, because you get the distance from the concealment switch, and if you have a direction, then that gives you a relatively good idea. Anyway, so that was the standard battle without APCS, just generally hitting things. And we'll try this again, but with the Epic Commander. And in this round, we are top tier. Base capture Aurora. By the way, if you're up against carriers, and I haven't really been, but if you're up against carriers, you don't have any AA. It's worse than Nelson. It's pre-nerf Nelson, so pre-buff Nelson. So forget it. Right? You may be a British battlecruiser, but your anti-aircraft firepower is abysmal, and carriers will absolutely ruin your day, pretty much. But we are fighting Colorado, Nagato, Fuso, New Orleans, Shores, Skåne, and an Icarus on Aurora in base capture. It's a defensive ship, just like the Nelson. It's a ship that isn't going to go in and push. So the most important thing is to keep an eye on your angles and put your bow towards the threat and be defensive at all times, and then just use your guns as you can. If you can't get all 6 on target and just have to dodge a salvo, that's okay. The forward gun angles are really good, as you can see here. So the C turret is, and we seem to have an AFK Dallas. The C turret is going just around the barbette and then can get on target without showing. You should almost never be broadside in the ship to anything. You should always be mostly bow in. So I'm heading over towards the western flank, because the other thing that differentiates her from the Nelson, I think the Dallas just woke up. The other thing that differentiates her from the Nelson is that she's quite a little bit faster. So 25 knots is not going to get you any kind of speed records, but it's okay. It's workable. So let's lock onto the Fuso and see what we can do against that thing at long range. There's the Icarus. But I don't really need to get any closer. I'm just gonna start unloading the armor piercing on the Fuso, because he's otherwise occupied. And no, actually he's returning fire, but that's nice. It means he's running into some torpedoes here. But that's also again why I'm already reversing, because I want to be defensive against the ship. I don't want to give any kind of broadside or anything. So I just want to get my shots off and then turn the ship and get him to either overshoot or. And now he's changed target, and he's unloading at the Dallas, because it's like, oh, light cruiser, I can actually damage, which is good, because that means I can shoot at that thing, unless there is a better target, like that New Orleans over there. Like heavy cruiser, and there's a Colorado, so Colorado's coming around in the middle, so I'm already starting to slightly reorient the ship, and again, keep in mind that the C turret turns around very, very quickly, so you can do these maneuvers even with a low turret traverse without much problem. Now I'm taking fire from the Fuso again, and I've got the Colorado coming in from the other side, so I'm sort of being at threat here of being sandwiched, and the New Orleans comes as well. The New Orleans is firing armor piercing, which is actually more dangerous towards me because the ship does not have great armor, so the New Orleans can probably do more damage with the armor piercing here than relying on the high explosive exclusively. So given that I think we just found out where the Icarus is, and I'm now starting to take fire from the other side as well. So I do need to dodge the torpedoes as much as possible. Could have probably used my sonar here, because I hadn't paid attention that the Icarus was unspotted, which normally means that he's around there somewhere. But yeah, that New Orleans is sitting stationary, which is not going to be healthy for him. So I'm already in reverse. I've used my first heal and just get the team something else to shoot at while we're deleting that cruiser. Yeah, there's the Icarus, but that's a Dallas problem. So now we have a Colorado to play with. And given that the Colorado seems to be engaging somebody else, again, this is good. That means I can I can enable my rapid reload and start hitting that Colorado. And as you can see, these 419mm guns at tier 7 are absolutely wrecking things. You only have 6 of them, but if you can get them on target, especially with manual aim, which is a little difficult at distances, but the grouping can be really reasonably tight, and I am consistently aiming too high because I think the Colorado is maneuvering here, otherwise I could have done a lot more. Yep, there's the Icarus, so let's get a little closer, finish off the Colorado, and who's now seen me firing high explosive for some reason, but it could have been the secondaries maybe. But yeah, we're just going to finish off the Colorado, and then we're going to turn around and get angles at the remaining defensive battleships in the capture circle. But yeah, that Colorado is dead. He's not going to have an awful lot of fun. And yes, that was a fire. I've damage controlled it because I'm not really under threat, and I will just delete the Colorado. And now we've got crossfire at the Nagato, while the Dallas is still dealing with the destroyer over there. And the Nagato is actually shooting at me, but we're in a hard turn. So I can probably dodge under most of that. No, actually it wasn't too bad. I'll salvo out at the Nagato. And we get ourselves a little bit closer because I've got some hit points to spare. And I don't really have the problem anymore of needing to angle against multiple targets. There's a Shores tempting target, but right now I've got the Nagato. This is about as close as I want to get, because now I can open up at that thing and start using the rapid reload. Now, unfortunately, the Shores is targeting me as well, because the rest of my team is bimbling around somewhere in the back there with 3 ships trying to kill that Icarus. But that's okay. I'm just going to sit at the living daylights out of that Nagato for now, and be in reverse again, and just open up the distance, make it harder for the others to hit. My damage control is almost there. Double fire, okay, damage on that, and dodge the Nagato shots and just back up. I think they've finished. They've managed finishing off that Icarus. So sooner or later, the enemy team gets somebody else to shoot at. And again, I can just unload onto the Nagato, and now I can move forward because that Nagato just got himself torpedoed because he wasn't paying attention, and that just leaves the Shores. And against that thing, obviously, I do want to be closer, and we'll unload at him. Not going to use the auto aim because it's a light cruiser, so. Not going to disable the auto aim because it's a light cruiser, so we can punch through his belt plating without too much problems. And yeah, the Shores has now completely run out of friends, so he's just running away. While I think there were some ghost shells here, so I think I had a couple of hits this battle that didn't hit earlier against one of the Nagatos, and just there I think there was another one. And yeah, Shores is running away, but that battle is over. And we've done over 90,000 points of damage in this ship. So, is this ship how does she compare to the Nelson? I would say she's on par with the Nelson. She's got some. The AP definitely hits harder, and the amount of citadels that you score with this thing is quite fun. Especially if you use manual aim, the dispersion can be a little trollish, but overall, for a 6-gun ship, can be also really, really good. As you've seen, a lot of the groupings were tight enough that, especially with the rapid reload on, you can really dish out a lot of pain in a short amount of time. The anti-destroyer sort of blap capability that the Nelson has, you don't quite have in this ship, and that's something you need to be a little bit aware of. So you do have the sonar, which is a benefit that you have over the Nelson, but it's not a destroyer hunter, and you're better off just really playing kind of like you would play something like a Slava, more from the back row, more from like 10-kilometer range, and as soon as you get shot at, you back off, and you always point your bow towards the enemy and retreat where you can. You can take quite a good amount of fire just being defensive, and I would say the ship's on par with the Nelson, honestly. She's not exactly like the Nelson. She's got different strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's a good thing because that makes the ship more unique. So overall, I'd say it's a fun ship. It's not super powerful. It's not massively overpowered, but it's a fun battle cruiser, and it's an interesting it's an interesting harbinger for what's to come with the line. I have no idea if the other battle cruisers are going to be like this, or if they're also going to follow the HE focused British battleship line style, which I honestly would prefer if they didn't, but we'll see how it turns out. And yeah, enjoy 419mm guns at tier 7 and just kick a lot of things to death using those. So interesting. And now I'm actually keen to see how the tech tree line is going to end up. But that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.